thanks. Like, hey, Scoob, did you hear Nikki Blake is hosting a Scooby-Doo panel? No. Yeah. Like on today's Scooby-Doo episode, Scooby-Doo and Shaggy meet Nikki Blake. Yeah, and a Scooby Panel. Like, we need to get this puppy started. Okay, Nikki Blake, take it away, Scooby-Doo.
Welcome to the Scooby Panel. I'm your host, Nikki Blake from ScoobyAddicts.com, and today we're going to be talking about Fred Jones. Before we begin, I'll have everyone introduce themselves, and Trevor, we'll start with you.
My name is Trevor Hawkins, and I am a pop artist and a big-time fan of Scooby-Doo, and Fred's kind of my favorite.
Wendy?
Hi guys, I'm Wendy BRYDGE. I'm a commissioned artist and I've been collecting Scooby for over 30 years.
Devin?
Hi, I'm Devin Smith. I'm a miniature artist. So I take everyday life-size things and I make really small versions of them. And I'm a big Scooby-Doo fan. And before you ask, this is my natural hair color.
And Joel?
Hey there, I am Joel from the YouTube channel Planet Scooby, and never before until today have I wished that I owned an ascot.
Well, I'm excited to talk about Fred, and we have a lot to cover, and I have a lot to read. So we're going to talk about basically his origins, and I'm going to read a whole page of stuff, and then I'm going to stop talking. Frederick Herman Jones Jr., or Fred, is the leader of the gang. Fred is 16 years old, 5 feet 11 inches tall, 185 pounds. He has dark eyes and blonde hair. Fred's defining character is the orange ascot he wears. At least in most series, it's missing from Get a Clue and What's New Scooby-Doo. Fred's character was inspired by the main character, Dobie Gillis, of The Many Lives of Dobie Gillis, who was played by Dwayne Hickman. We also learned from Burnett Griffey that the design of Fred's character was based on a shy cameraman at Hanna-Barbera who was tall, blonde, and good-looking. She said all the girls had a crush on him. Fred was named after Fred Silverman, the CBS executive that brought Scooby-Doo to television. From the behind the scenes, we learned that Fred was voted best looking, and his nickname was Pickles, according to his yearbook. Fred traveled with a performance troupe before devoting himself to solving mysteries. And there was an article that said Jones hams it up in Hamlet. When the gang is scared, Fred sings Old Man River from Showboat to soothe them. Fred hoped to be a mystery writer because he felt like he was doing something worthwhile for him. And he tells the rest of the guys, "I love you guys," at the end. In Aloha Scooby-Doo, that's where we learned his middle name was Herman. In A Pup Named Scooby-Doo, his favorite magazine was the National Exaggerator. And in Gourmet Ghost, we learned that Fred came from a long line of chefs. In Camp Scare, we learned that Fred went to Camp Little Moose for summer camp as a kid, and the Camp Little Moose logo was on Shaggy's shirt and the images that were posted for the Mystery Pups. So there's a little connection. In Scooby-Doo Team Up Volume 6, Fred owns a complete set of Super Friends trading cards. In What's New Scooby-Doo, he revealed that he had hay fever and was allergic to cats. In Velma, they ruined him in Velma. I'm just going to go with that. In Be Cool Scooby-Doo, we learned that Fred suffered from corpulophobia, which is a fear of wits and anything related to wits. In Big Top Scooby-Doo, we learned that he loved the circus, that he took a circus arts class, and he could have mastered the trapeze if he didn't break all those bones. And apparently he can bench press 220. So, what do you guys think about Fred as a character? Joel?
Oh, where to start with Fred as a character? I don't know where to start. Yeah, Fred tends to be a lot of people's favorites. He's like, I keep thinking back, you posted the episode today, so probably people, when they watch it now, they might have seen it, but the Scooby Natural episode, Wendy made some great comments about Dean falling in love with Fred. Like, she thought Dean was saying like Fred's a wad throughout the whole episode, and then eventually Dean is like, Fred is the coolest guy ever. And that's basically my thought with Fred. Fred is just, he's selfless, he's brave, he's a good thinker, he's got no jealousy in him, he's always looking at it for everyone's good, or the good for everyone. Like in that episode of Scooby Natural, they're like, when they have that reveal that the supernatural is real, Fred's like, you mean we could have been fighting Dracula all this time instead of shady real estate agents? So he just wants the best for everyone, the best for the world. And I could go on and on and on, but I know everyone else has more to say, so I will just stop right there. Fred's the best, though.
Devin, what are your thoughts on Fred as a character?
I mean, Joel said it. I mean, like, he's great. You know what I mean? Like, not to get into like the evolution of his character just yet, you know, keep it basic, but like, you know, he kind of started off as like a pretty basic white guy, you know what I mean? And he's like, over the time, he's just grown into such a lovable character. Like, he's just funny. He's like this like himbo, like guy that everybody just loves. You're like, oh, he's so stupid, but he just means so well. You know what I mean? And I just like, I love him for that. And like his name alone just suits him so perfectly. It's just so flat. You know what I mean? It's the perfect, like, in the nicest way. In the nicest way. It's the perfect, like, boring guy name. A little bit. You know what I mean? It's just like Fred. Like, it fits him perfectly. It fits him perfectly. And I love Fred. I don't know. Every time like I watch the show, it's just like I'm drawn to Fred. Like, there he is. I've just always loved him. He's always been my favorite character. And there's a debate I've been thinking about for years. And I looked it up today to specifically see how it's spelled. And I wanted your guys' opinions. Are you going Freddy with a Y or Freddy with an IE? Because
Oh, with a
it's
Y.
Why?
With a Y.
Why?
In a lot of places, it's IE.
That's
In
what I'm
hell.
wondering.
But I think canonically it's a Y though.
I would say Y as well. But then I was like, is it IE? Because it says that like on the Scooby-Doo wiki and stuff too. And I was like, interesting. And those are my basic thoughts on Fred.
Trevor, what are your thoughts on Fred?
Oh, well, he's like an ideal type. And so basically the very definition of somebody that's good. And there's really nothing wrong with being good. I mean, a lot of times nowadays, it's like being good just is never enough, or you can only be good if you've been bad, or you can only be good if you've been through a whole lot of stuff and had a lot of dirt thrown on you, and then you can shake it off and kind of be good. But underneath is, you know, something else. But Fred just basically strikes me as somebody who, you know, he had a good upbringing. He had a privileged kind of life, probably, but he also wasn't affected by that to the point where he was a mean-spirited person or an unkind person. I mean, I do, as I'm watching the Scooby-Doo movies right now, but they let them all have bits of kind of snarky humor to each other. And he does have some sarcasm about him. But I really like that he's the straight man. I mean, in a way, he's kind of like the Seinfeld to the rest of them. And to do that, you just let everyone else have their day. I mean, he's corralling them, but like you can't really corral cats. You know, he just kind of pushes it all together and the best comes out. But no, he's basically a good guy. And again, I argue, if you think that's bland, well, I can't help you.
Wendy, what are your thoughts on Fred as a character?
Oh, Freddy. Oh, how I love you. Let me count the ways. Amen to what Trevor had to say. Whoever decided that being the good guy was boring, forgive me, but to you, there's nothing wrong with being the good guy. And like Trevor said, you don't have to be bad and then turn good. There are people in this world that they're just good inside. And that, I think, is the quintessential quality of Freddy, is that I don't think that there's a nasty bone in his body, and he just wants the best for everyone and is willing to give of himself to make sure that that happens. And while I do feel like all of the Scooby characters do possess that quality in some measure, I think Freddy kind of leads the pack and helps inspire it in the others. And that's the other word that I would use to describe Freddy, which is aspirational. There is nothing wrong with aspiring to be better. And if anybody thinks that they can't improve, oh my goodness, you need to improve. If you think that you have no room for improvement, that right there is the proof that you have plenty of room, because like, don't be like that. Everyone has room to improve. And I feel like Freddy is a wonderful example of what you can aspire to be, whether you're a man or a woman. I mean, I love Freddy. I aspire to be like Freddy, and I'm not a man, I'm a woman. But his leadership qualities and the type of friend that he is, and just his outlook on life, I don't ascribe to the idea that classic Freddy is boring. I really feel like maybe you lack imagination if you feel that way about the character, because when I watched Scooby-Doo, even when I was a kid, part of the fun was like imagining, like filling in the blanks for yourself, you know, like we had these, like I will call them generic characters. I don't think that they're boring, but they're generic. There's plenty of room for you to imagine things and make stuff up in your head, and just like take what was given to you and just like make it more. And I think that's really important. And so you can give Freddy whatever kind of story you want, but I don't really think he needs one. If you want to do that, that's okay. But I think on his own, we were given enough of his like internal characteristics that the rest of it kind of doesn't matter. So I think it's okay to leave it up to your imagination. But Freddy is something that we should all maybe aspire to. And we really need to kill this idea of like the boring white guy and that there's something wrong with being nice and all of that stuff. Like, no. Freddy has become a casualty of the modern world, along with a lot of other things, and it's really unfortunate. You know, like no, I'm not gonna go there. I was gonna go somewhere else, but no, that's good. I love Freddy. Freddy's an amazing character. He's not boring, and he doesn't need any kind of changing. He's perfect the way he is.
I agree with all of you said. Devin?
I want to just clarify as well. I said that he has a boring white guy name.
I knew you were going to
Listen,
say.
I don't think Freddy is a boring white guy. I love Fred. He's my favorite, especially Where Are You? Because like you were saying, Wendy, like the characters are so like, they don't have a lot of character yet. So you can like kind of like imagine like what their backstories are. And I love that. Like, that's why Where Are You is my favorite. I think he's generalized as a boring white guy. I do not think he's a boring white guy. And I just wanted to say that.
No, and I should have clarified, like it did cross my mind as the words were coming out of my mouth. I'm like, damn it, Devin's gonna think I'm talking about him. But honestly, no, I'm not. I'm not. Trevor even sent like a screenshot of a comment that somebody left on a video or something today, and it was like, oh, Fred's boring, you know. So I was not like, honestly, it wasn't a reflection on you. It was like the bazillion other people that just say that all the time, and I just want to slap them.
No, I totally get it. That's why I wanted to say something, because I was like, people watching this back.
Yeah, I know.
I said he's a boring white guy, and then you said he's not a boring white guy, and I was like, okay, I don't think he is. People think he is. I love
him. All right, getting into the voice actors and actors. We have Frank Welker, who has voiced Fred since 1969, with the exception of A Pup Named Scooby-Doo and the Velma series. Thank God. Norma McMillan did the Kenner Talking Show Project Projector. The Kenner Projector. Keith Scott did the Paul's commercial. Carl Steven voiced Fred in A Pup Named Scooby-Doo. Freddie Prinze Jr. played Fred in the live-action Scooby-Doo and Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed, and he voiced Fred in Robot Chicken. Ryan Verba was young Fred in Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed. Chris Cox voiced Fred in Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed, the video game. Robbie Amell played Fred in the second set of live action movies, Scooby-Doo, The Mystery Begins, and Scooby-Doo, Curse of the Lake Monster. Jim Wise was Fred's singing voice in Scooby-Doo, Music of the Vampire. Scott Innes voiced Fred in a McDonald's commercial and for the Scooby-Doo Playmobil Mini Mysteries. Zac Efron voiced Fred in Scoob. Pierce Gagnon voiced Fred in Scoob, and he was supposed to continue the role in Scoob Holiday Haunt, which we still want to see. Come on, Warner Brothers. We want to see it. Glenn Howerton voices Fred in Velma. And then for the live stage shows, Jerry Richardson played him in Scooby-Doo in Stage Fright Live on Stage. Jamie Wilson in Scooby-Doo and the Pirate Ghost. Noah Michael Fish in Scooby-Doo Live Musical Mysteries. Josh Little in Scooby-Doo Live The Mystery of the Pyramid. And Chris Warner Drake in Scooby-Doo Live Musical Mysteries. So hands down, Frank Welker is definitely my favorite because, I mean, he's the original and he's been voicing Fred forever. And how can he not be anybody's favorite? How can you not like him? Devin, what are your thoughts on the voice actors for Fred?
Wow, they're all boring white guys. No, no, obviously, yes. Frank Welker, the best. If I could ever meet Frank Welker, like I would literally die. Like he's Fred through and through. Like he gives the perfect performance. Like he embodies Fred like as a character. Like he is Fred. I grew up on the live action movies. They're still some of my favorite movies. The 2002, 2004 ones. So I love Freddie Prinze Jr. You know, he's great. Like I think he's a good live action Fred, but he doesn't exactly have like that Fred voice. You know what I mean? Like Frank Welker does. Like he's got that specific thing about him that's just perfect. So I guess the other like voice actor like in an animated series, I guess that would be my favorite, would be a pup named Scooby-Doo. I feel like he does a good job. Like I love the like theorist Freddy like in that, like him and the red herring. Like I love their whole dynamic in that. Robbie Amell, and listen, I've watched the other two Cartoon Network live action movies like last week. Me and my wife did for the first time in like 10 years or whenever they came out. Like she's never seen them. I was like, we should watch these. We watched them, and they weren't as bad as I remember them being because I didn't like them the first time I watched them. But I really do wish that his hair was blonde, and that's all I gotta say. Like if I can put this terrible wig on, I mean, if I can have these natural gold locks. Yep. He can do it too.
I agree. He should have been blonde. Trevor, what are your thoughts on the voice actors for Fred?
Well, yeah. Frank Welker is the best. And I have gotten a chance to meet him, which was really cool. And he was very nice. And I asked him a question or two about Fred, and he said I was an in-depth fan, which now it's on record. But the thing is about him, I've seen other interviews. It's really odd that he tried out for Shaggy first. So Fred wasn't his first consideration, and in all his other voice work, I mean, he almost tends to look at everything else he's done more than Fred, because basically Fred was his speaking voice as if he drank like 2 or 3 cups of coffee. And that's how he's done him all that time. So I guess to him, that's just himself. So I just don't know if he understands how much we love him or how much he really fits, you know, all the things that the Scooby-Doo world turned out to be. Like it's someone who's just very self-deprecating about being wonderful. But no, yeah, and then pup named Scooby-Doo, that would be my second. Because he just had this frenetic energy on the edge of crazy kind of style that I enjoyed. Even though I don't really want Fred to be crazy. But anyway, yeah.
Wendy, what are your thoughts on Fred's voice actors and actors?
Yeah, to be honest, I can appreciate everyone that has done it for different reasons. But like honestly, I really don't like anybody else's other than Frank's. Like, it's just not, I don't know. I guess it's because I feel like even now, Frank is still voicing Freddy, but I don't like the character of Freddy now the way that I liked him in 1969. So even when the voice is the same, the way that the character has been tweaked over the years is different. And so it kind of like just affects my overall feelings towards the character, not necessarily the voice. But yeah, I guess probably because Frank's voice is essentially Freddy's voice, maybe that's why it's so endearing, because he wasn't putting a lot on. It's just him. So it comes across as very authentic and believable. And so anything other than that is just lacking for me. I will say though that Noah Michael Fish in the 2013 live musical mysteries, well, let's just start with no show ever needed a musical version. And I'm not even opposed to musicals, but this is very cringy just in general. However, that actor did an awesome job as Fred. He looked the part, he sounded really great, and he captured Freddy's like presence when he was performing. So even though what they were performing, for me, it was just kind of ridiculous and I didn't enjoy it, I really appreciated how he approached, like he wanted it to be Freddy and he made it Freddy in kind of a ridiculous setting, and it translated well as Freddy the way that I love Freddy. So, and he also, like I say, he really looked the part. The guy that came after him in like 2016, there's nothing wrong with this, but we're talking about Freddy as a character. He was just so slight in his build that he looked like he was wearing a costume that didn't fit him. And so he didn't sound like Fred, he didn't look like Fred, so it really fell flat for me. But the first guy that did it in the musical, he did a really good job. I appreciate that. I would watch him, like if they did a new live action movie, I'd actually rather see him than Freddie Prinze Jr. do it. So, but other than that, like I'm not crazy about the other voice actors or the other like genres of Freddy, period, regardless of the voice.
Joel, what are your thoughts on Fred's voice actors and actors?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with what everyone was kind of saying. Freddie, Frank Welker, big shoes to fill. Like, mad respect for anyone who's done his voice. They're probably like wondering, why am I doing this when you got Frank Welker? But like Wendy said, I don't like Freddie past a certain point, but I might think maybe Frank Welker might enjoy voicing something different than like the original Freddie, maybe. I don't know. I'm not saying he does or does not, but he seems to be still having fun with the role. Especially in Scooby Natural, he probably had a lot of fun with that role. Yeah, I don't know, like I can't imagine Scooby-Doo without Frank Welker behind the voice of Freddy at all. Maybe they'll use AI like they're doing with James Earl Jones and Disney stuff now to keep him going. I don't know, but I can't see like a Matthew Lillard, not Matthew Lillard necessarily, but Matthew Lillard kind of just sunk into the Casey Kasem role, kind of work naturally. He's been doing it for 20, 25 years. I don't know how long now. I can't imagine anyone doing that for Fred going forward.
Yeah, I wonder who would take over when Frank Welker retires. It's not something I like to think about. Frank Welker just needs to live forever.
Agreed.
So that he can voice Fred forever.
Yep.
Absolutely.
So let's get into the evolution of Fred. So he basically started as a smart, strong leader of the gang. They made him a little paranoid for a pup named Scooby-Doo. They made him a mess in Mystery Inc. He was a little bit of a control freak and be cool. And then a total wad, as Dean put it, in Velma. So what are your thoughts on the evolution of Fred? Trevor?
As someone who watched them when they were kind of new and when I was little, and then you fill in the blank. I mean, you do kind of want to see a little development over the years in the things you love. Actually, where my heart found itself was in Zombie Island and Witch's Ghosts. They let them grow up by a few years, let them move on and have depth and feeling. I really don't know why they never came back to those models and that understanding. I think that was the perfect part too. And especially in modern culture when 30 somethings are still young enough to have lives on TV that kids can look up to, letting them get into their late 20s to me by now seems to be kind of it would be a good way to do something forward thinking and more adult and still keep the wholesome vibes as well. Just let the situations around them change and let their characters kind of stay the same. But I mean, just the way Fred was Daphne's cameraman and the way he had her back and the way he loved her. I mean, in real life, if you were scripting something like that, I can just talk about it and I really feel the emotion of all that. But in Mystery Incorporated with the, oh, I love traps. I love Daphne. I love traps. Yeah, I'm like, really? 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 So no, I mean, most of the things I don't. I mean, the modern stuff with the late 90s, yeah. Does that make sense at all? Okay. Well, let someone else go.
Wendy, what are your thoughts on the evolution of Fred?
Oh, I don't feel like being nice about this. I'm not known for being nice. People think I'm nice, and I'm like, do you not listen to anything that I have to say? Like that you can, like, do you honestly believe that? Freddy's evolution, deplorable. Deplorable. Now, I've come to realize that maybe I love original Fred so much, and I'm so adverse to any kind of change because I'm boring AF too. You know, I've been eating the same Subway sandwich since Subway opened. I have absolutely zero desire to try something new. Okay. I love routine. I love things that don't change. I would watch Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? If it made 4,700 seasons and they were literally the exact same thing with just a different ghost and a different villain in every single episode, and I would be in heaven. I would have no trouble doing that at all. I'm really not someone who likes a lot of change or needs a lot of change. When I find something that I really, really like, why would I want to change it? If it's not broke, don't fix it. You know, I'm still watching shows from the 1950s. I've seen them like a bazillion times. And when I'm 90, I'm still going to be watching them and I'm still going to be loving them. I don't want anything new. I don't need anything new. There's nothing new that I like, you know, and that's how I feel about Fred. So kind of everything beyond, I guess, the Scooby-Doo show, although we do get to see Freddy a handful of times in some of the Scrappy episodes. Thinking specifically, the only one I can really think of off the top of my head that might be like one of the latest, no, like, you know what I mean? Like one of the last times that we see him in like that pre-Zombie Island kind of setting, I think is Happy Birthday, Scooby, the 2-part one with the Red Skull. And we do get to see Freddy in that. Not really sure we see him again after that until Zombie Island. And I like, for me, that was the cutoff. Anything that came after that, I'm just like, I can find flaws with it. Now, flaws just being things that I don't like. So are they really flaws? Well, they're only flaws to me. So I understand where people are coming from. I'm just not that person. I'm not that person that like needs more character development. I don't, and I don't need things to be modernized or changed. What they did to him in Velma is disgusting. But to be honest, that's how I felt when Mystery Incorporated came out too. And I was like, you have taken this beautiful, good, kind-hearted, aspirational man, and you've emasculated him. Why? Like, you made him the butt of the joke. And that's my issue, is I feel like Freddie has been the butt of the joke for the last, 20 plus years. And I hate that. I just hate it because I feel like, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I just feel like that's just jealousy. Fred was this like perfect guy, even if he's like a little bit plain. He's this perfect guy. He doesn't have any like obvious flaws. And I just feel like everyone was like, well, can't aspire to be any better than what I already am because I'm lazy. So we can't have this character. We can't just like leave him like this. We have to make something be wrong with him. So let's make a joke out of him, and like that's how I feel when I watch it, even now, even like the newer movies and stuff. Obviously, it's not as prevalent as in some of those series like Mystery Incorporated, but it's there and I can feel it and I don't like it. And it bothers me because for me, that's not Freddie. And like, if Trevor doesn't want me to say this, then maybe Nikki can just cut this, but can I bring up the question that you asked me yesterday about what you would look like tonight? Can I bring that up on the panel to make a
Sure.
point?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
So Trevor sent a picture in his Freddie outfit, but he had a full beard at the time yesterday. And he was like, Wendy, do you think I should shave the beard or leave it? And I was like, oh, absolutely shave it. Not because it wouldn't look good. Like he looked great even with the beard. It's not about that. But for me, I look at Freddie and I'm like, Freddie to me would be like the guy who's like clean cut, short hair, no facial hair till the day he died. I cannot picture Freddie with a beard. I just can't. Or even with scruff. Like for me, that character, the way that I imagine him, which again is all shaped on my own preferences and how I grew up and like everything. It's all personalized to me. So I'm not saying that people have to agree with me. This is just my opinion. It's not the only right opinion for sure. Definitely not. But for me, like Trevor looks like Freddie. I wouldn't imagine Freddie like thinking that he needed to like do something, just as an example, like facial hair to be more manly, because Freddie is that man's man where he's not trying. He's masculine, but he's not trying. It's like Daphne is feminine, but she's not putting it on, like, yeah, she's got a dress on and her hair is done nice, but she's not trying. She doesn't look like, these tarted up women today. They're trying really, really hard, and it makes them look like they're in costume. And Daphne is just natural. She's just a beautiful girl. Freddie's just a masculine guy. He's just a good guy, that's just who Freddie is. And I don't think that we should vilify him for that. Like, why are we punishing him? I feel like Freddie's being punished for being that. And that pisses me off. I don't like that. I don't like that at all, because I'm not a fan of the world the way it is, and people the way that they are slobs and they don't care. Guys, I read an article this morning that made me think of Fred in the Saturday Evening Post, and it was all about, we need to like do away with wearing a tie. It's time to throw the tie in the garbage. And I was so angry that it was in the Saturday Evening Post, because I look at that publication, like they still post Norman Rockwell paintings. They're old school, they're retro, they're vintage, you know what I mean? Only I guess they're not really. So while I don't even particularly like ties, it's not that. The whole argument that this author was putting forth was like, who cares how you look? You can still do the job and it doesn't matter. I'm like, but it does matter, because I know, again, back to something we've talked about before, judging a book by its cover. Well, guys, that's what the cover's for. Okay, that's what the cover's for. There is meant to be some level of how you present yourself is how you want people to see you. Okay, good or bad, whether they see it the way that you want them to or not, it's irrelevant. The point is, I'm dressed like this, I look like this because I want to project a particular image that matters to me. You know what I mean? I don't I don't want people to see me. You know, I've been outside, I've been chopping wood. There's like dirt smeared all over my face. My hair is like, you know, all over, and I'm wearing something like ripped up and shredded and stuff. Like, I'm not going to post that on Instagram. Okay. I'm just not. I'm not going to do that. There's nothing wrong with being like that. That's life. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that everybody needs to like tart themselves up to be presentable. But when you go out, or, you know, like just in the comments section of this article, I was very, very impressed with how many people were saying what I was thinking, which is, you know, number one, you look good, you feel good. I don't think that's vanity. I think that's fine. You know, put some effort in, you'll feel better. You'll be able to get on with your day a little bit easier, you know? But it does matter that you try, and people have like blurred the line between casual and slovenly. It's kind of just all blurred together now. There's nothing wrong with casual, but you don't need to look like a hobo when you're at work or when you go to the grocery store. You know what I mean? It's going to be a cold day in hell before I go to the grocery store in my pajamas. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you see me in the grocery store in my pajamas, call the doctor, because I've gone senile. Like, something's really wrong. You know what I mean? Like, call the doctor, please, to come and get me and take me away. I'm not trying to shame anybody. What you do is what you do. That's fine. But even if you have nothing, it's still obvious when you're trying to look after yourself. Just the fact that you like wash in the morning, you know, or you comb your hair. So your appearance does matter. And it does tell people something about you. They are going to, whether they say they will or not, they are going to judge you on that. And I think that original Fred, he was just the total package. And over the last 50 years, it has just been like a downhill degradation of that character, of an attack on his internal character. And now we're to the point where what they did with the Velma series, where we've resorted to talking about a teenage boy's penis and how big or not big it is. Like, guys, grow up. Grow up. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous, and Fred does not deserve that.
He wasn't able to cut his own food, and like he used baby talk in order to get people to do things for him. It was just, they just made him so pathetic, and I hate seeing him like that. Joel, what are your thoughts on the evolution of Fred?
Yeah, I'm not gonna say anything new here. Love the original Fred. I loved how he was smart in the start. A little bit boring, I guess, like whatever. But he's also a bit of a klutz, like Never Ape and Ape Man. Fell back in that trap door. And with Spooky Space Kook, he got hoisted up in the air on that hook. And he bounces back. Like, his traps don't work, he bounces back. His mechanical skills are questionable. I don't know if they're good or bad. Mr. Machine's always breaking down. They're always getting lost, but he just rolls with the punches. And that's what I love about Fred. Like, what is boring about hopping in a van, driving in a spooky swamp and getting lost and knowing you're fine because you got Freddy with you? I would not consider that adventure boring at all. And yeah, it's just sad how over the years they had to give him some backstory or give him some more personality, and they just ruined it for him. What we have in Velma is just weak sauce, and Mr. Ink was kind of weak, and I did like him in Zombie Island, and which is Ghost, but that's probably one of the last few times I liked him. And I kind of thought, thinking of it now, like, not to put down the job of cameraman. If you're a cameraman, you're watching this, like, it's a great job. But for Freddy, I think he was kind of slumming it. Maybe he was trying to stick with Daphne, but I just kind of see Fred as a leader, and maybe being like a paramedic driver or in the military. I don't know, like firefighter, just something like that. Just using his skills better. Again, nothing against cameramen. I have friends who are cameramen, and like if that's your job, that's your calling. But for Fred, I don't think that's his calling, you know? He should be doing something more important to helping the world out. But yeah, that's
why they went back to solving mysteries.
that's why they went
Wow,
back to
they
solving
did.
mysteries.
Yeah.
That's all I got. Yeah.
Devin, what are your thoughts on the evolution of Fred?
I think Joel's calling out cameramen, and
Yeah.
I think Wendy's calling out me because I didn't shave my beard.
No.
Oh.
Well, remember,
this is-
you're Fred's brother, right? You're not
Oh,
I'm
Brad.
so-
Yeah, he's
Brother
Brad.
Brad.
Brad. Yeah.
I'm bread,
Guys.
like the food you eat.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm bread.
Yeah, no, please know that I was gonna bring up the beard thing earlier, and I was like, how can I say that when Joel and Devin are here? They're gonna think that I'm making some kind of slight, and honestly, I swear it's not. That was not it at all.
Wendy's just coming
know
after
that.
me today. She's like, is wrong. No, I'm just kidding. I'm pretty easygoing. I don't care. I get it. I know what you mean. I'll bring something a little bit new to the table though here with the conversation of Fred's evolution. Obviously, pre-2000s Fred is like the best Fred. That's the OG Fred. Love him. Where Are You's the best. I love it. I do love Zombie Island, Witches, Ghosts, and all that stuff. Like, that's the best Fred. What's New is good. What's New is obviously a classic. I grew up with What's New, you know what I mean? But I feel like starting there and then in the live action movies and then definitely like Mystery Incorporated and Be Cool, they kind of made him into the more dumber character, which like I like to think of like when the 2000s started is two different Freds, like the 90s and before. I love, that's a classic Fred, but like I do enjoy the 2000s Fred, not because they're like I'm not about them like slandering his character and being like, oh, Fred's an idiot, you know what I mean? But I do enjoy a little bit when like I like his obsession with the traps a little bit, you know what I mean? Like I like that he's obsessed with that. I like that he cares about it. Sometimes they overdo it. Yes, Mystery Incorporated was crazy with it, but I do like that he's like he's passionate about it and he loves it and he loves the mystery machine. He loves traps. He's like all there for the mystery. Like his heart's always in that aspect, and I like that part of Fred's character. And I like when they make him a little bit dumb sometimes, just because it's like I take like when he's the butt of a joke, I take it as like, you know, in a friend group, people like you make fun of each other. That's what you do. You know what I mean? Like, so when Fred's the butt of the joke, he's the butt of the joke sometimes, and that's okay. But definitely in Velma, like, I'll be honest, before it aired, I was like, okay, I'll watch this whole thing through and like I'll see it through because like I'm curious, like maybe it'll be good. I don't know. But I watched the first 2 episodes like the day they came out, and I haven't watched any of the rest of it since then. And like, not entirely just because of like the characterization, but a lot of because of the characterization. Like, I get it's satire, I get it's satirical, like I get it. I understand what they're doing, but it's just not for me. Like, I don't like the comedy isn't my style of comedy, and like they really ruined the characters a lot. I really didn't love it. You know what I mean? Like I was hoping going into it I'd like it, and then like, yeah, especially like since we're talking about Fred, obviously, like I feel like they did him the worst. Like they really did him dirty. Like, I don't know, like you guys said, you don't need to be talking about little kids junk. You know what I mean? Like, and that's just weird. And like what they did to him is just weird. I don't know. I don't know if you guys, I don't know if all of you finished the series or like watched it all the way through, or if you guys just watched the beginning of it either. Like, did no one finish?
I've only seen the first 2 episodes, and it's only because people want to see a panel episode on it. And so now I feel like I have to watch it. But
I almost don't even want to like discuss it because it's so divisive, where people are like, it's great, like you don't get it, it's like new, it's comedy, like it's good to change it up. But it's just like, that's great if it's for other people, but it's really not for me. So
yeah.
sorry.
So let's talk about Fred's role in the gang. He's the leader. He holds the gang together. He keeps them on track. He's like the dad of the group, I guess, you know. Wendy, what are your thoughts on Fred's role in the gang?
Yeah, he's definitely like, you said exactly what I was thinking, was like he is like the mother or the father role in the group. He really, really is. But I love that he's not heavy-handed with it. You know, I think this is something that really was special about Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? Like all the early series, is that even though, yes, we kind of put each member of the gang into some sort of box or category, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. We do make certain assumptions, like who Fred's the leader and all this kind of stuff. But it's not expressly said, and it doesn't feel like it's being forced on the viewer. And we don't, at least to me, I don't really feel that, I don't know if dynamic is the right word, but like at least we don't see the rest of the gang sort of resenting Freddie for taking on like a leadership role. They all kind of feel equal for me all the time. Like I don't really see it like a hierarchy in the gang. And yet there is a subtle role play going on where definitely I think Freddie is the head of it. You know what I mean? But he's not a jerk. You know, lots of times, especially in Where Are You, we get like a great double team of Fred and Velma sort of playing like mom and dad, and they're kind of solving the mystery. You know what I mean? Like Freddie will say, boy, gang, I think we've almost got this wrapped up, right, Velma? And she's like, yeah, and I've got a plan. You know what I mean? And they kind of, I like when they play off of each other in that way. And it makes sense, you know, the smart one and the leader. Why would they not be doing that? So yeah, I kind of look at it like a mom and dad thing, but at the same time, we do still get like a lot of equality within the entire dynamic of the group, which I think is great. Freddie always keeps like a level head. Even when he gets strung up on the meat hook, he doesn't freak out, you know, and he even manages to crack a joke, I feel like a side of beef, you know, and he has to wait for them to come and get him down. And he's always like a logical thinker. I mean, like, again, Freddie kind of is the quintessential like male archetype. It's logical thinking, doesn't get emotional, but he's not a jerk either, you know, has a lot of compassion and caring, but he's still a man's man. And I think that's just what makes him such like a perfect character, you know, if you're into that. And a lot of people are not into that. I'm into that. So I really, really appreciate it. But yeah, I mean, I would have no trouble calling him like the unofficial leader of the group. And I think my favorite part of the group's dynamic is that nobody holds like any kind of animosity towards him when he does step up to fill that role. They kind of just all roll with it and it feels natural. You know, maybe it would be more accurate to say he's like the big brother and he's just looking out for everybody, and he has good ideas and he thinks logically. So why would it? I mean, I would, like Joel said, you know, you're out in the middle of the swamp. Even if the mystery machine breaks down with 4 flat tires, who cares? Freddy's in the van. You're going to be fine. You know what I mean? Like Freddy could be Doctor Who. I'd get in the TARDIS with Fred and I'd feel totally safe. Time and space. Let's go. Let's hunt space ghosts, like actual space ghosts in space. If it was with Freddy, like, sure, let's go. Like, you trust him. He's trustworthy. He's responsible. He's reliable. Fred's just the best.
Joel, what are your thoughts on Fred's role in the gang?
Yeah, I have like a partial thought I was just thinking about now too, with what Wendy was saying, and I was trying to think of something new to say because she stole my lines. But another important role Fred has is he tackles, like, he's so authoritative. He can tackle like people who are criminals who are twice his age, right? Like when you're a teenager in high school, very few of us would want to take on some bank robber or shady real estate guy or whatever. But Fred has no problems just revealing the truth, ripping that mask off, chopping them, outwitting them, like no problem doing that. Where I don't think, and if I was that young in that position, I would be like, you know, I'd take all my evidence to the police or my parents or probably an older brother or something. Like, I don't think I could do that as a kid. So that's one role Fred has that I can offer that's new. And I'll leave it at that.
Devin, what are your thoughts on Fred's role in the gang?
Going off of also like what Wendy said, because Wendy always says it best. Um, he obviously everyone knows that he's like he's the leader, you know, like it's not mentioned really except for when it is. Like in like the live action movies, like that's a big part of those is like, oh, Fred's the leader, and like he kind of like takes the credit and doesn't really give credit to like Velma, and that's like their whole thing. And like, so I don't really like, I love those movies, but that's not like the dynamic I'm looking for within the gang. Like that's not the role of Fred as like a leader that I like. Like I like in the classics, like Where Are You? Obviously, you know, just easy to speak on that. It's like he is the like he's the leader, but they don't say he's the leader. He just kind of like takes charge, and no one's like upset that he like takes charge of the group of people and is like, hey, like we're gonna split up. Let's go here. Like I'll drive. Like I kind of do that within our friend group is like I'm usually driving everybody around, and like me and like my wife Tasha, it's like, okay, well, like let's figure this out. Let's go here. Like, but we're not like better than, you know, like he's not better than the rest of the gang because he's taking charge. Everybody plays a different role within the group and they all help each other in different ways. But like someone has to be like, okay, let's all make sure we're like in order. Like, let's make sure everything's going well. Like, so it's not just like a jumbled mess of teenagers running around in an old airfield or something. You know what I mean? Like someone's got to be like the level head, like, okay, guys, like let's make sure that we're all on the same page and figure this out so we can get out of here and get some gas and go to the concert or wherever the hell we're going. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. So like, I love Fred as the leader, but I like it when he's the leader of like a friendly leader, not a take charge, I'm in charge and I'm not going to give you any credit leader.
Trevor, what are your thoughts on Fred's role in the gang?
I mean, according to the series Bible, I mean, there was certain things I read that had him as the only one of age to drive. So that would be the reason why he was driving the Mystery Machine, and Daphne's father being wealthy, but caring for his kids' friends to the point where he got them a vehicle and trusted them all to hang out together. And then Fred was kind of the one who kind of managed the van. I mean, I really like that, mainly because the idea of having a parent that had the wisdom to see that they wanted their kids hanging out with other kids, and then they wanted them to have a safe mode of transportation and stuff. And I think that's pretty forward thinking. But I mean, that he kind of maybe lucked into the role of driver, but maybe that kind of evolved into the leader part. I really feel like he's not forcing himself either, but I kind of feel like he's highly intelligent. I mean, his way of working through a mystery is kind of the mechanical way of putting together a puzzle. So he and Velma kind of have like a mirror image idea of what they can do for each other. And I think that idea has pretty much been totally wrung out of modern iterations. Is in a way, I really think Fred has the same level of intelligence as Velma. It's just shown, it just shows in different ways. So and my earlier comment about maybe him being the Seinfeld kind of the straight guy over it all and watching everyone else do their thing. I mean, there's a certain magic, there's a certain power in pulling yourself back and letting other people do what they do best. It may make you look boring, but in reality, you're giving of yourself to let other people shine. So yeah, I think Fred does that. And also at the very end, he's always the one when people are thanking them, he's kind of saying, well, we're not doing it for the money, but they say we like to solve mysteries for fun and stuff too. But I still remember that particular thing with Decoy for a Dog Napper when they were talking at the end about the work they did, and Fred said, you know, Scooby's our dog and we love him very much. So I don't know, it just he's the leader for sure, but he's not forceful with it, not demanding about it. So there you go.
We're going to talk about Fred's family members, which means I have 2 pages of stuff to read. So just bear with me. Skip and Peggy Jones are Fred's parents in Scooby-Doo Pirates Ahoy. Mayor Fred Jones Sr. is Fred's adoptive dad in Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated. Judy Reeves and Brad Childs are Fred's parents in Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated. William and Victoria Jones are Fred's parents in the Velma series. General Harry Meeting is Fred's grandfather in the Velma series. I haven't seen that episode, so I don't know if he was just mentioned or actually in the series, but from doing research, it seemed like he was just mentioned. Eddie Jones is Fred's uncle, the publisher of the National Exaggerator in Chickenstein from A Pup Named Scooby-Doo. Uncle Carl is Fred's uncle who owns a cheese store called Cheese Our Moo Good in Wisconsin, and he likes to lift weights. That is Fright House of the Lighthouse from What's New Scooby-Doo. Count Von Jones runs a museum and lives in a castle near a factory that makes specialized coffins. He's not in the episode, just mentioned in the episode Homeward Hound from What's New Scooby-Doo. Bobby Flay is Fred's uncle, who's a professional chef and the owner of Rocky Harbor Culinary Resort. He appeared in Scooby-Doo and the Gourmet Ghost. Edward Duflay was an ancestor of Fred. He was the original owner of Rocky Harbor Culinary Resort. He also appeared in Scooby-Doo and the Gourmet Ghost. Fred mentions an uncle that is the first symbolist in the U.S. Marine Corps band in The Secret of Shark Island from the new Scooby-Doo movies. He mentions his 3-year-old nephew in The Haunted Horsemen of Hagglethorne Hall from the new Scooby-Doo movies, which is weird because we don't hear about any siblings at all. But somewhere, somehow, he's got a nephew. Scott McDoon was Fred's cousin. He is the captain of the cruise ship SS Casey in All Paws on Deck from Be Cool Scooby-Doo. Donald Jones is Fred's father and the villain in Professor Huh Part 1 and Professor Huh Part 6 3/4 from Be Cool Scooby-Doo. And then from the comics, we see his grandmother in Scooby-Doo #2 and his grandfather, who was a movie actor in Scooby-Doo #18. Uncle Staxo was Fred's uncle who owned a wax museum, and he appeared in Scooby-Doo #3. Uncle Thurmond was a rich uncle who owned a beachfront estate in Miami. Apparently, Fred spent time there as a child. In Scooby-Doo #126, Uncle Jesse always makes me think of Full House. Always. Was Fred's uncle who owns a rodeo. He appeared in Scooby-Doo #15. Uncle Ned was his uncle that owned a traveling carnival. He had an uncle that owned a traveling carnival, but he never mentioned him in Big Top Scooby-Doo. That's kind of odd. That was in Scooby-Doo Where Are You #5. Uncle William was his uncle who was the mayor of Lighthouse Harbor. He appeared in Scooby-Doo #84. Aunt Glenda was the wife of Uncle William, and she was in Scooby-Doo #84. Uncle Max worked at the National Space Agency, and he appeared in a coloring book, Scooby-Doo, Where on Mars Are You? Cousin Ted was the producer of Evil Ella's TV show and appeared in Scooby-Doo #83. And then in a video game, Jed Jones was the cousin of Fred who works at the Monstrous Fright and Magic. And he appeared in the video game Scooby-Doo Unmasked. Hi. Joel, what are your thoughts on Fred's family members?
Yeah, I had to do a ton of research coming into this one because I didn't know about any of these really. Because I'm a bigger fan of like the first decade where, aside from 2 quips about the nephew and the symbolist in the Shark Island episode, there's no relatives at all, visual references to relatives or meeting any relatives of Freddy at all, which is odd because Velma has 2, Daphne has 2, Shaggy has 2, and Scooby has 3 if you count Scrappy. And Scooby-D. Scooby-D's a relative, Scooby, no one really knows, so maybe 2. It's up for debate, I think. Or someone can correct me if they know for sure, because I'm old, foggy memory. But Yeah, I wasn't aware of anyone. And then I thought to Mystery Inc. I'm like, yeah, okay, adoptive father, but it was his father at the start. And that plot line was so convoluted. I read it a couple of times and I still didn't really understand what was happening. And I saw the episode, like the series, I've watched it twice, still don't really understand what was going on there. Because again, I'm old and I just don't pick up on these things, I guess. And then I knew about his parents in Velma, but that's just not Scooby to me, so I don't want to count that. But then I thought back to Pup Named Scooby-Doo, and that I remember that episode with that uncle. So that if I had to pick a favorite, it'd be that Uncle Eddie, probably, because he was voiced by Frank Welker. I think that's why I'd pick him. Nothing really else, but that's I knew nothing about relatives really going into this, and then the more I read, I'm like, yeah, because no one ever really makes an appearance afterwards. Someone might change my mind on this panel, and I'll go, oh, that's cool, I'll check that out. But right now, being the first to speak, yeah, I'm indifferent.
Scooby-Doo is Scooby's cousin.
Right.
And I was a little surprised that Fred's parents didn't show up in a pup named Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
Because we saw Daphne's parents and we saw Velma's parents.
Right.
I'm pretty sure we saw Shaggy's parents. So where were Fred's parents? That is a mystery that needs to be solved. Where were Fred's parents during a pup named Scooby-Doo? Devin, what are your thoughts on Fred's family?
I also, like, going into this, I feel like, honestly, with all the characters, not just Fred, like, I don't really know all of their relatives, because every series is like a whole different canon, and it's like, oh, here's their new parents, and these are their parents. Oh no, these are their actual parents, and like, it's just too much to keep track of. So like, listening to you name all those people, I was like, wow, I don't even remember a quarter of them. You know, and like, that's one of my favorite things about Scooby-Doo too, is like all the different like cousins and uncles and stuff. They're like, oh, we're going to meet my uncle this and my uncle that. And I'm like, wow, these are huge families. Like, these families are crazy. But if I had to pick one, I'm going to go the Wisconsin one, because I'm from Wisconsin. And that's like the only basis for that at all. And, you know, it's a good episode of What's New. They're at a lighthouse and stuff like that. But also, every time they portray people from Wisconsin on TV, they're always like, oh yeah, let's go to the Packers game and get some cheese. And I'm like, I don't know. I've never met anybody that's talked like that in person, like literally not one time in my life. But I'll pick Wisconsin guy.
Uncle Carl.
Uncle Carl from Wisconsin.
Trevor, what are your thoughts on Fred's family?
Joel, I just want to carbon copy his. It's like Uncle Eddie was my favorite from Pup Named Scooby-Doo, just because Frank Welker voiced him, and he's just such a kind of a boisterous personality. And in it being Frank that did it, kind of gave you an idea what would be an alternate future for Fred himself, you know, if he went solo and just went off on pursuing all the secret truths and conspiracy theories in life. So yeah, that was
Wendy, what are your thoughts on Fred's family?
Well, Nikki, you missed the best one.
I missed one?
Fred's long lost brother, Bread, is here with us tonight. And clearly, I mean, I will fight anyone that tries to tell me that Bread is not Freddy's best relative.
They do look very similar, that is for sure.
They
We're
totally
twins.
Totally,
I believe
totally.
I totally believe it.
Toastily.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
When I sit in the sun too long, that's me, toast.
Yeah.
I mean, I like everybody else said, who even knew that these people existed? It's such a random thing, and I in a way I don't like it, but in another way it is also kind of endearing that they will just like throw out these random relatives here and there with like no consideration for canon, you know what I mean? Which, given how the Scooby franchise has evolved over the years, maybe it's good that we don't have a canon that goes beyond like the 1970s. Like, maybe that's a good thing. But obviously, Count Von Jones, a museum, lives in a castle and lives near a factory that makes coffins. Is he looking for a wife? Because I'm available. That's all I'm gonna say about that. I mean, And honestly, now that we know that Freddy would love to fight Dracula. We learned that in Scooby Natural. I feel like Fred needs to go visit Count Von Jones. Just saying, Coffin Factory, like there's something's going on there, and I want to be in on it.
You notice that a lot of these family members are from comics. So if you didn't read the comics, you would never even know that they existed. There's so few family members in the episodes in the movies. And I feel like the rest of the gang have a lot more family members that show up. But poor Fred, like he's just a loner, I guess. I don't know. No parents and a pup named Scooby-Doo. Gotta figure that one out. Let's talk about his lack of a catchphrase, or is it really a lack of a catchphrase? I mean, some of his phrases are "let's split up, gang." Looks like we have another mystery on our hands. I guess that wraps up another mystery. And then in Samurai Sword, he realized he didn't have a catchphrase. And then in Haunted Holidays was the first time he used "hold the phone." So, I mean, Fred has catchphrases. Maybe they've changed throughout series, but "let's split up, gang." I've always felt like that was his catchphrase. Devin, what are your thoughts on Fred's catchphrases?
The only thing I could think of when I was thinking about this before is like I kind of love that Fred's versatile in that way. I know we've talked this whole time about how they've changed Fred's character a lot, and we don't like that, but I do like how they've changed his catchphrases over time. Like they're always changing. Like they're like in Be Cool, like he'd always say like "light them up," and they'd like turn on their flashlights and stuff. And like I feel like every series kind of like does something different with it. And I kind of like that he's the only one that is like a full sentence for his catchphrase instead of just like one made up word. Like he's like, it almost makes him just like the logical, like he's the leader, like he's got the level head, like he's like, I'm gonna use real words, you guys, and not this made up stuff that you guys are saying. He's like, hey, let's split up, gang. And I feel like is this controversial? I feel like "let's split up, gang" is more iconic than like Jinkies or Zoinks. I feel like everyone knows "let's split up, gang." Like when you think of Scooby-Doo, you're like, "let's split up, gang." Right? Is that just me?
No, I agree. It's
Okay,
definitely an iconic line that he says.
Okay, good. I'm not alone there. Also, red herring, that's more of a running gag. I don't know if that's exactly like a catchphrase, like him thinking that red herring is the villain or whatever, but I feel like that's almost a catchphrase too. I don't know. I love them all. I love because they're always really weird and make no sense. Like "hold the phone," it's like, I guess so, Fred. I guess so.
Trevor, what are your thoughts on Fred's catchphrases?
Well, it's like I do like that the others have like an exclamatory word. I mean, it's like, but as Devin was saying, it's like he's always got this presence of mind where he's not, oh, you're just never going to catch him just saying anything. But I remember him saying "gosh" a lot. And so he does kind of have a moments of surprise. But I like "let's split up, gang." That it's the favorite one. And some of my research, though, there was a thing that some people were talking about really liking the way he said the word "treasure" in several episodes of things like "treasure," which I think could be fun. But that would also preclude always having a treasure in every mystery. Yeah, but
Wendy, what are your thoughts on Fred's catchphrases?
Yeah, for sure. "Let's split up, gang," or "looks like we got another mystery on our hands." Definitely iconic Freddy lines. I'm definitely going to agree with Devin that I think maybe whether this was intentional or not, it certainly lends itself to this of, Freddy doesn't need like some kind of quirky little exclamation because he's so mature. And he's the leader, and it's not even like a conscious thing, but I feel like it just kind of plays into Freddy's like blandness, if we want to like stick to that, you know what I mean? And it works. It totally works. Like Freddy's so iconic that he doesn't need a special catchphrase. Maybe we could say that, but "hold the phone." hang up the phone. Let's never hear hold the phone ever again, please. Hard pass.
That seems to have become his catchphrase now in the recent series.
Yeah.
Joel, what are your thoughts on Fred's catchphrases?
Yeah, I agree. Hang up the phone with that. Hold the phone for sure. But with Fred too, I think the lack of surprise, I think that's a leadership quality. Like if there's a fire and people are running around with their chickens, like chicken's head cut off, the calm person is just walking slowly towards the fire extinguisher, taking it off the shelf, spraying at the fire. And that's what Fred has to do. He has to say, okay, everyone's surprised. I have to maintain the strength and everyone's going to look at me for what to do next. So let's split up, gang, or looks like we got another mystery gang. Just that's how I see Fred and his catchphrases.
That's a really good point, though. Actually, like, it's everybody else's is kind of like a scared thing, or like a you know what I mean? They're like and he's like, let's figure out why you're scared. That's like kind of like his catchphrase in return. You know what I mean? It's interesting. It's interesting.
They do have "Let's split up" as his catchphrase in the Scooby-Doo encyclopedia. So.
Okay.
But Frank Welker actually ad-libbed the hold the phone though. So funny that we're disparaging the one thing he brought to the character in the last decade. But just saying.
Let's talk about Fred's relationships. So Daphne, of course, it was implied for a long time, and then they did start making their relationship part of the series. Lena Dupree from Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island, Jessica from Scooby-Doo Camp Scare, Lena in Big Top Scooby-Doo, her husband thought Fred was in love with her and he got mad when she flirted with him. Marcy, Velma's cousin, fell in love with Fred in a Scooby-Doo Halloween. Rose was a childhood friend of Fred. She went trick-or-treating with Fred and his cousin Scott McDoon when they were little in Be Cool Scooby-Doo. And Lindsay Pagano, Fred saved her life and she became interested in him in Reva Ross Regis. Those are all the relationships that I have, so I'm sure I am missing stuff. Trevor, what are your thoughts on Fred's relationships?
Well, this is maybe going, well, Wendy, I'm just sorry. You can just go away for a few minutes, but I'm teasing with her. No, Fred and Daphne all the way. Though I definitely don't like their relationship being turned into like the schmoozy PDA fest, like public display. I like how it evolved in Zombie Island, where you saw the subtleties of how they acted together, but you really didn't need to see every single ABC and the fact that they were interested in each other or were dating. Because the kids, at a certain age, it's like we really didn't need to see relationships with them at all. But as far as having them, I think the two of them seem the most logical. Even watching some of the old things, I was watching some of the Scooby-Doo movies. There's one where Daphne was calling out and they had her calling Fred's name out twice. Like she called everyone's name out and then she asked for him at the end, and even more so. It was implying that he, of all the people, was the one that she wanted the most. And that was like a 70s thing. So, and of course, the way they split them up with Fred and Velma and Daphne. But in the Scooby-Doo movies, it's like they were putting him just with Daphne more. So I could see as a little kid seeing that you just see a couple. And then if you have any positive ideas in your life about that kind of thing being good, you kind of want that for them. So long and short, that's the relationship I'd accept. I think he likes flirting with other people, and I think he enjoys being the guy that gets the attention and lifting the 220 but I think his eyes are for Daphne. I think he's that classic one woman guy, and that's the one woman I want him with. So
Wendy, what are your thoughts on Fred's relationships?
Well, I'm gonna partially agree, but partially disagree with things that Trevor said. Some of it I'll go along with, but some of it I definitely think in a different direction. Obviously, if Freddie had to be with somebody, it's Daphne. Okay, I can totally ship that. That's fine. I don't personally need any kind of romantic relationships in Scooby-Doo because I'm just not interested in that, and I'd rather just focus on the mystery and like leave the drama out of it. But for sure, if Freddie was going to end up with somebody, I would like it to be Daphne. So, unpopular opinion. I made myself unpopular when I said stuff about Amber and Crystal. I don't think this will be as bad, but I don't know that like everybody's going to be like, where are you coming from with this? Not a fan of Freddie in Zombie Island because I feel like that is the first time where the implication that there is some kind of more than friends relationship between Fred and Daphne is put forward. It's still subtle. They don't come right out and say it, but like Trevor mentioned before, they are meant to be older in that. I think that's pretty clear. They're not teenagers anymore. They all have jobs and stuff. And Fred and Daphne have stuck together. And Freddie in that has like, I feel like a sign of the times. They wanted to make Daphne like a stronger, more powerful, assertive woman. That meant though, like bringing Fred down a little bit and into the background, you know what I mean? Which not for me, but that's okay. But I feel like for me, Freddie would be the boyfriend that when you're dating him, if some other girl tried to flirt with him, he would shut it down immediately. There would be no flirting. Freddie would have eyes for just one girl and one girl only. And if Freddie was single, I don't think that he would be a flirty guy. That's just not how I see Fred. I see Fred as being like just completely straight-laced, very serious, but not a stick in the mud, you know, but I don't see him as being a flirty type man at all. And it bothered me in Zombie Island that I felt like I was supposed to believe that they were together. And I don't think he did enough to shut down Lena. And he saw that it was bothering Daphne. And I just felt like, I don't know how else to say it, but like real Freddie would have never let Daphne get to that point where she got upset. And I kept thinking like, you're kind of a shitty boyfriend in Zombie Island. Like I would have been upset too if he was my boyfriend. Like I would have expected him to like shut it down. I don't care if that is the best damn pecan pie that you've ever had in your life. You shut your mouth and you say nothing about it. You say, thank you for giving it to me. I'm grateful to have something to eat. And that's it. You just zip it, you know? I just feel like Freddie, the Freddie that I know from Where Are You, would just inherently be like that. That he would just never, he would always be thinking 10 steps ahead, you know? I don't want to hurt my girl. I don't ever want my girl to feel like I have eyes for anybody else. And it would just be like natural for him to just like reject everything and anything around him that might interfere with that. So that was kind of what bothered me the most about Zombie Island. Like I do like that movie, but that to me was the shifting point in Freddie's character. And I didn't like it. So it's probably just a me thing, but I also kind of see, I could see Freddie as being just like a confirmed bachelor. Happy to be single, just living his life, doing something important. You know, Joel mentioned great jobs that real life Freddie would maybe do. And I don't know, I could see him as being I don't want to call him a career man because I feel like those people are often ambitious for the wrong things. I feel like Freddie's ambition would literally just be to make the world a better place. I could see Freddie becoming a doctor and joining something like Doctors Without Borders and traveling around the world, going where he was needed and not wanting to like have to leave his spouse at home, you know? I feel like if he was with someone in a relationship, he'd want to be there 100%. So I actually, when I think of Freddy, that's kind of the Fred that I imagine, that he's just off on his own, just saving the world in whatever way he is found to do, and he's not like lusting after anybody, and he's just content and satisfied, and like that's his calling. That's the Freddy that I would imagine if I'm thinking of like an older Fred, and what would you be doing, Freddy? I don't really see him in a relationship at all.
I think he would need to be in a relationship, and I only say that because he is like the father figure type of the group. And I could see him like wanting to be in a relationship and wanting to have kids and, you know, continuing to be in that role through the rest of his life. I mean, Daphne and him are perfect for each other, even though I don't like relationships in Scooby-Doo, they are. She even loved him when he was dead in Scooby Apocalypse. So, I mean, that's true love. Joel, what are your thoughts on Fred's relationships?
Like everyone's kind of said right now, I don't want to see relationships in Scooby-Doo either, but we're just having fun here. I could see him with Daphne. I think if he wants to be, putting aside all other parallel universes, let's just say he just wants to be solving mysteries, he's got to be involved with someone on the team if he wants a relationship, because no wife is going to let him go off in a dark, spooky motel with some cute girls and fun with some anxiety and the dog. No wife will let that, and which would be a bad idea. So he's got to be with someone. And like you said, I could see him having kids and then training those kids to be better than him. Like him and Daphne just training their kids to be just the ultimate crime fighter, I guess, you know, that'd be cool. But as it is, I'd rather see Fred and Daphne's relationship just kind of implied and not really forced on us.
I did like it better when it was implied. Definitely. Devin, what are your thoughts on Fred's relationships?
I would agree. I mean, I like when it's more implied too. I don't really want it like shoved in my face, you know what I mean? Like so straightforward. If there's a relationship there, I would like it implied, but preferably also I think that I'd like just to see them all just doing their own thing. Nobody's dating each other, like they're all just doing their thing. But like my opinion, I feel like Fred and Velma would work out. I just feel like they're both smart. They're both like really into the mystery, because like Shaggy, I feel like, okay, like I'm just thinking about like where are you? I feel like Shaggy and Daphne are both just kind of like there for the ride. And I feel like Velma and Fred are really the ones that are really like into the mystery, and they're like, we want to solve it, we want to do it. So like if there was like in none of the other gang, I feel like those two would get a mystery solved together. You know what I mean? Like they would always be able to figure it out. So I feel like they'd work really well together. So I guess I'm on the other side.
I could see them working. I totally, I mean, they do work really well together. So yeah, that could work.
I got you, Devin, because in the precursor Shadows of Scooby-Doo, there was Dobie Gillis, and Zelda and Dobie ended up married. So they did the movies of them in the future. So, and I seem to recall maybe saying that to some people, implying that Fred and Velma might work, and was nicely shut down. So it's nice to see that your presentation of the same idea.
I think they would work good together.
Yeah.
They're meant to be.
I don't know if I would say they're meant to be. I mean, I guess it could work, but
so if there was no one, if there was an apocalypse and they had to settle, they would make it work.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Fred's traps and his obsession with traps. He always made very elaborate traps, usually Rube Goldberg style, and most of the time the traps didn't work because Scooby and Shaggy would set them off before the villain could, and Scooby and Shaggy were always bait. So, what are your thoughts on the traps, Wendy?
I would just like to clarify here. I feel like because this is one thing that we didn't talk about when we did the Scooby Natural panel, and afterwards I was like, oh, I wish I'd brought that up. You know, Dean says that Fred's traps never work, but that is not accurate. Freddy's traps always work. It's just that Scooby and Shaggy and that one time Velma, but it was still Scooby's fault in Never Ape and Ape Man, get in the way. It's not that the traps don't work. The traps always work. Now, Scrappy's traps don't always work, but Freddy's traps, 100% of the time, they do work. It's just that somebody trips up a little bit, and unfortunately, you know, bad things happen. However, there are plenty of times when, in spite of Scooby and Shaggy making a little blunder, the trap still captures the villain on the first go. Hassle in the castle, you know, Scooby gets shot up with his bum in that basket, and he gets lifted up, but then he falls on the ghost. Trap worked. What's the one in the swamp? The witch in the swamp. Which witch is which? Scooby, unfortunately, you know, Freddy's like, duck, Scooby, before the branch swings out and hits the zombie and the witch, and poor Scooby's almost said that in a really inappropriate way. Scooby is wearing a burlap sack that he is inside, and it gets caught on a tiny little twig, and he gets knocked with the villains. I caught that. But the trap still worked. That's the point. So the only thing that I really have to say about this is Freddy's amazing and he's perfect and his traps always work. It's just that somebody sometimes gets in the way, and it sometimes has to be repeated, or sometimes it's such an amazing trap, it works in spite of the blunder.
Joel, what are your thoughts on Fred's traps?
I got a lot of thoughts. I don't know if they'll make any sense, but Freddy must have been like a Boy Scout, always prepared. And you learn traps I've never was a Boy Scout. I just know this from watching an episode of Simpsons when Bart became a Boy Scout and he was trapping Homer with floor pie and stuff. So that's all I know about Boy Scouts, but there's that. And then Freddy's like also, he was like the first MacGyver. He could just take a bar of soap and some iron boards to make a springboard and a washing machine. He'd catch some villains, and he could take anything that was laying around, make a trap out of it. He was just brilliant mind. Everyone else is like looking for ghosts. Freddy's looking at like stuff he can incorporate later to catch that ghost. He's thinking way ahead of everyone.
He did go to Camp Little Moose, and we saw that Camp Big Moose had the water park and all the fun stuff. Well, Camp Little Moose, he learned how to do all that stuff. Yeah. Devin, what are your thoughts on Fred's traps?
Oh, I love them. I mean, that might be one of my favorite parts about Scooby-Doo in general, is the traps, especially like in Where Are You? Like they were so, it's just so good. The Rube Goldberg-esque traps, like something about those I just love, like in general, it's just like all the random stuff set up, like the one that Wendy brought up too, Hassle in the Castle, that might be my favorite Scooby-Doo trap of all time, just because it's like random stuff. There's like maybe a cannonball, I was gonna say a bowling ball, but like there's the knight and like all this stuff, and you're like hitting stuff, and there's a big tube, and like Scooby somehow gets into a basket and his like butt stuck in it, and like I don't know how Fred like thought that this was like what would work, but like even like you said, Wendy, with the blunders, like it still ends up working. And like I'd love to see a version where it worked out with just Fred's initial plan with no Scooby or Shaggy messing these things up. But like, I don't know, just seeing them all actually function is the best. And I feel like some iterations of Scooby-Doo lose the traps a little bit sometimes. Like they're not as complicated. And I feel like the more complex and like convoluted, the better the trap is. Because if it's simple, if it's just like, let's throw a net on them, like, I don't know, like that's boring. Like that's not as fun. Like, and I'm so glad they initiated that from the start with Where Are You? Because like, if the end of these episodes just ended with them being like, oh no, like the bad guy tripped over a stick and fell down, let's take his mask off, like I'd be bored. Like, you know what I mean? Like I want to see something crazy to capture him. Like this whole thing's got to be worth it. And I feel like Freddy's traps always bring the action.
And they're so elaborate for a 16-year-old. You know, you don't really think about that, but I mean, most adults can't make the traps that he's making. Trevor, what are your thoughts on Fred's traps?
They are pretty good, and that they reveal his intelligence. Like I was saying, Velma's like, you know, the Sherlock, and he's like the Thomas Edison, you know, just making magic happen. I think, let's say, one of the favorite ones was the underwater with the, I want to say it's the Captain Cutler with the soap bubbles and the hose, and that has to be my favorite, because it was just, I remember when I was kids, like, how in the world would that work? And it did. But what I really don't like is how Fred's trap interest has been kind of sullied over the years and made fun of and made silly. And I mainly say that in that my research for this, wanting to find honest to goodness, like compilation trap videos, it's like when you go on YouTube, it's pretty much just discussing his trap obsession from Mystery Incorporated and showing stuff like that. And it's like, oh, come on, people. Why can't we celebrate the Rube Goldberg devices? I don't think I found a single video that had just the complete, the addition of all those really cool traps from a long time ago, which if I did YouTube videos, I would probably do. But I don't like it. They made it a mental illness for him rather than like showing how wonderful and intelligent he was. They had to kind of almost make it a flaw and some kind of strange obsession. So I don't know how you all feel about that, but
Agreed.
Completely see where you're coming from.
Well, we've learned today that Fred is not flawed, and he is a good guy, and you guys need to stop picking on him. He's
Amen.
not a wad just because he's a good guy. Even Dean knows that. Wendy, do you have any final thoughts on Fred?
Yeah, just want to reiterate what you just said. Like, guys, lay off of Fred. Okay, your jealousy of him is not becoming, and it's very un-Freddy like. So be more like Freddy, be less jealous, and just aspire to be something better.
Joel, any final thoughts on Fred?
Oh, one thing I wanted to add, which Trevor reminded me of, is that Freddy in the episode Creepy Creature of Vulture's Lake, I think, or Vulture's Claw, I think it was that, references to Shaggy to put his handbook, which is like all the traps. He's like, Shaggy, handbook, this number trap. I wish someone would create that book. If anyone's watching, can draw, has a mind like Fred, please make that book, sell it to me, I'll buy it. Be priceless to me. Name your price, sold.
Devin, any final thoughts on Fred?
BLF, be like Fred, like Wendy said. We all want to be Fred, and that's why people hate Fred, is they just want to be him, and that's all. That's it.
Trevor, any final thoughts on Fred?
Well, I don't know if it just popped in my mind to discuss, but just the aspect of the ascot. I mean, in the time, it was really just a symbol of kind of the cool hip kids, that are out and about listening to music and stuff. It was just an expression of flair, and it wasn't really anything that he was looking for his life to be defined by. It was just part of his cool garb. And then I think you shouldn't, mess with the ascot. You should just leave it alone. But yeah.
I agree. Every time I'm watching a different series like that comes out, or I have over the years, I'm always like, he's not wearing the ascot in the new version. I'm like, keep that, like they got like an orange stripe or something weird, and I'm like, just leave the ascot alone. Just do it.
Yeah.
Like it's honestly his whole character. That's a huge part of it.
His favorite band was the Ascots 5, so yeah. Before we wrap up, I'm just going to read this dialogue from Ghastly Ghost Town between Fred and Daphne because it's just so funny and inappropriate. Fred says, "This desert reminds me of a woman." And Daphne says, "Why is that?" Fred says, "It goes on and on and on." Daphne says, "Man." Fred says, "Come on, Daph, where's your sense of humor?" And she says, "Shriveled up in this heat."
Banter. Mm-hmm.
So Fred can be funny too. Yeah.
You should
It's
just stand
great.
up.
It's great. All right. We're going to wrap up. Before we do, please let everyone know where they can find you on social media. And Trevor, we'll start with you.
You can find me on Instagram at Funky Philosophy Fridays, and all the sounds are F's. I mean, yeah.
All the
I
F's are
have, I have to remember it's no PH, but
Wendy?
On Instagram, I'm Wendy Bridge. Twitter, Wendy Loves Jesus, and my blog is wendylovesjesus.wordpress.com.
Devin?
You can find me on pretty much all the social media sites at awesome__thanks. Instagram is the main one I'm active on, so come chat with me there.
Joel?
You can find me on YouTube. Just search for Planet Scooby.
And you can find all my links on ScoobyAddicts.com. Just want to wish Frank Welker a happy birthday. His birthday is tomorrow. And thank you for joining us for another Scooby panel.
Happy birthday!
happy birthday, Frank. Yay.
Thank you for tuning in to another Scooby panel. I'm Nikki Blake from ScoobyAddicts.com. If you like these panels, please subscribe to my channel for more great discussions. A huge shout out to our patrons, Julie Rosen, Ross from ScoobyFan.net, Scooby-Doo of Roblox, Ruth Elliott Hillston, and Tage. If you would like to support the Scooby panel, please go to patreon.com/ScoobyAddicts. A very special thank you to miniature artist Devin Smith, pop artist Trevor Hawkins, Joel from Planet Scooby, and artist, blogger, and Scooby collector Wendy Bridge. Scooby Panel is available in podcast form on most podcast platforms or as a web series on YouTube. You can find Scooby Panel on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter as @ScoobyPanel. Scooby and Shaggy were voiced by Scott Innes. Check out Scott's website, onescottshop.com. Scooby Addicts artwork by Will Davenport. Video editing by Nikki Blake. Music composed and performed by Bovine Nightmares. Please join us next time for another Scooby Panel.